So I'm wearing this shirt again because got it for Christmas, and the girlfriend will get a bit annoyed if I tell her I don't like it. So awkward. I thought it'd be worth us talking about the gear that didn't make it through 2019. As we talked about some of the better stuff that we played or favourite pedals, I thought maybe it'd be interesting because some of the stuff which either I didn't like or that I did like, but you know, gear you have to move some of it on sometimes. I thought it might be worth talking about that. So let's just get straight into it. So I started off the year selling a Keeley Nova wah. This is the Keeley like fixed 2-position wah thing where you can set like a heel and a toe and switch between them. Turns out I don't really like fixed wah pedals as well as normal wah pedals, so that one I really didn't use. So that left. It was a bit of a strange pedal to buy in the first place anyway, to be honest, because that cocked wah sound, I mean, it might have a place for some stuff, but I'm not really sure what it's a bit of a niche pedal. I then had an Ibanez AZ Premium. Now, I think most of you will have seen the Ibanez AZs or AZ, depending on where you're from. I had one of the brown 22 fret one Premium, so the Indonesian model. I thought it was quite an impressive guitar, really well made and everything, but it didn't really have any sort of character of its own, and the actual neck profile for me was a bit wide and flat, maybe. Coming from, I used to play Ibanez guitars when I was younger, but now I'm more of a Strat or Tele person, so I'm used to a kind of vintage radius fretboard and kind of a thicker neck generally. So yeah, that was a kind of cool guitar. I really like the looks of them, but that didn't hang around for long because it didn't really have much of a character of its own, to me anyway. Tone King Falcon Grand was an amp that I really wanted to try for a while. I had it for a few months. A bit of a one-trick pony for me, I felt, although the clean tones on it were great. It was also quite bass heavy compared to some of the amps that I'm used to using, so that one went as well. And also now I'm a Mesa Boogie artist, so I don't need to try any other amps, so that's kind of cool. Here's a pedal which I really didn't get on with at all in my setup, which is the Electro Harmonix Key 9. So I thought this might be an idea because I had sort of a jazz gig where the keyboard player wasn't going to be on it. So I thought, well, maybe I could sort of fill out the sound a bit with a Rhodes kind of emulation. I found the pedal didn't really work for me. It kind of just muddied up the tone a bit, so it wasn't very inspiring for me. So yeah, that one didn't hang around long either. Next, I got rid of my Vox Adio because Yamaha sent me a THR 10, so I didn't need to have 2 practice amps in the house. But Vox Adio, I really still recommend them. They're a great little amp, and your missus may put up with them in the living room, depending on whether she likes handbag looking things or not. But I found that had some really good tones on it, and for the time that I spent with it, I really enjoyed it. So I would put it right there with the THR. The only positive that I could pick the THR over the Adio 4 was being able to have delay and reverb at the same time, which I think is a really nice feature, certainly for the way that I play. I moved on the Harley Benton 8-string just because I had the Strandberg as well. I'm coming to think that probably 8-string guitar playing is not for me anyway, but we may see, I don't know. That Harley Benton guitar I was quite impressed with, especially for the money. I did like a little review of it, and it's really well built and better than my dad got an Ibanez Geo relatively recently, and that was kind of shocking in comparison to the Harley Benton. So I was quite impressed with the build of that, especially for the money. I moved on an Earthquaker Dunes, which is like their take on a tube screamer. I think it's like the smaller version of the Palisades as well, which is like their big take on a tube screamer with like all of the different options and a boost. The reason for this was that I've already got the Keeley Tone workstation, which has a really nice tube screamer on it, and also a compressor and a blues breaker. And I've got the Behringer Tube Overdrive, which is like the £18 tube screamer, which I liked. I also had an Ibanez TS Mini for a bit, and that also had a great tube screamer. So I've come to think that actually a tube screamer kind of is a tube screamer. So you don't necessarily need to spend lots of money on one. So Earthquaker Dunes is a relatively expensive pedal. I decided I could let one go because I've got my tube screamer needs kind of covered. I had a Boss DM2 Wazza for a bit. Now this is relatively expensive delay pedal, again talking about expensive stuff. And I bought it on the recommendation of someone else who I kind of trusted. I didn't really do much research on it, but it turns out it's based on an analog pedal, and when you're looking at analog delay pedals, part of what you're looking at is like dirty repeats, which is something it turns out that I'm not into. I think I like my delays to be quite pristine, certainly not interfering with your direct signal as well. And the DM2, when I listened to it through my Mezzo, I was finding that even my clean signal, it was doing stuff to, so not the repeats, but the main note as well, if you see what I mean. So that wasn't for me, so I moved that one on. Other people, obviously, in the shoegaze kind of world and that sort of stuff, I imagine there's like plenty of big fans of the DM2. For me and the type of music I do, that just didn't really work. I sold my Mezzo Boogie Lone Star, which just was too heavy for me. I lent it to someone on a gig. It's a great sounding amp, obviously. I lent it to someone else that I was doing a gig with, and I was playing bass. And then when I got back from the gig, I was trying to carry it upstairs in a flight case, and I was just like, this really isn't for me. So I moved that along. But as I say, it may be one of those things that in the future I might try and get a 1x12 version, or maybe with my Mezzo Mark 525 and another amp which is coming next year, which I'm quite excited about. Maybe I've got that clean stuff covered enough where I don't need to have a Mezzo Lone Star in the house. But yeah, a great amp while I had it. On the amp front as well, I also had a Marshall Origin 20, which I got from Guitar Guitar. I was really impressed with that amp for the money. Again, I moved that one along just because I have too many amps in the house. But if you're looking for a great little amp on a budget, that is not a bad choice, although it doesn't have a reverb on it, which is the one thing it's kind of missing. But I was looking for something that did that blues breaker kind of vibe, but smaller, because I had a blues breaker as well, but that was massive. That went this year actually as well. But yeah, turns out that really big amps that are heavy, the 2-speaker things, are not really my kind of bag, just because it's a lot to move around, and I don't know if it's generally that necessary in today's world. So another pedal that I had and moved along was a Kingtone Octalan Mini. Now this is, as with all Kingtone products, really quite an expensive but boutique piece of gear. I was quite impressed, but not to the level where I thought that I needed to keep one. So I moved that along relatively quickly. It didn't necessarily have enough gain in it either for me to justify keeping it around. So that was part of the reasoning for letting that one go as well. I had an Ibanez TS Mini, which is the mini take on the Tube Screamer. Again, a great sounding pedal, and I think I A-B'd that with a Dualist. So I had a Kingtone Dualist for a bit as well. And both of those pedals are great sounding Tube Screamers. Obviously the Dualist has also got that the blues breaker side. The TS Mini I let go just because I've got the Keeley Tone workstation and now the Tube Overdrive, so I thought I don't need another little tube screamer around, I'm kind of good. The dualist, I really like the idea of the. It's got that 3 settings on it. One which is glass, but I found that it was just too difficult to justify keeping a £300 pedal around when the Keeley Tone workstation kind of did all of that stuff that I needed it to do already. So it didn't make the cut. I had a Boss SD1 Wazzer, which I compared with the Boss SD1, and for me, I didn't find there was enough difference to justify keeping the SD1 Wazzer. Although when I did use it with a real amp, it was a more pronounced difference, sort of more low end with the Wazzer than when I used it with a modeler. However, I still didn't think, given that it's like a tube screamer-ish type take on a pedal, I felt I don't need to keep the more expensive version around, and I'll keep the SD1 around just because it helps to do like comparisons and stuff. It's kind of one of those stock pedals like a DS one, which is kind of useful to have around just in case I need to put together a video or something. I also had a Keeley Bubbletron for a second. Now this sounded like a good pedal to have. It was mainly I bought it because it had like a nice auto wah on it, or like an envelope filter, but it had a lot of sound in the pedal, but not anything that I liked. So I moved that one along quickly as well. Pod HD 500X, I've had that for 5 years or so, but I moved that one along because I bought the Line 6 Helix, and yeah, not really looked back on that. The Pod HD 500X I was really impressed with back when I bought it. Quite a nice step up in gear from the XT Live in terms of like the pedals and stuff, and was good for how long I had it. I don't think I ever had much of a problem with it, and I used to run that in 4 cable method and stuff with my Mesa Nomad. Yeah, and that was good while I had it. There was an Epiphone Les Paul 1960 Tribute that I bought locally just because it was quite cheap for what it was, and I was interested in Les Pauls at the time. It was in quite dodgy condition, so I cleaned it up, and I liked the pickups in it, and I really liked the coil split in it, but the neck on it was quite thin, so I moved that one on. At the same time, I think I bought the Tokai Les Paul that you might have seen in a few of my videos, and I'm still not completely sold on the Les Paul as an ergonomic feat of engineering. Coming from the Strat and Telly world, it's a bit of a slog to play one, and I do think probably I need to be thinking about different pickups in there, given that I'm not a massive fan of humbuckers. So that's another thing I might be looking at in the new year, maybe, or maybe I just deal with what a Les Paul sounds like and just try and get the best out of that I can. Maybe I'm not a Les Paul player, that's also fine. I think I also sold the PRS this year, the PRS S2 22, which I really liked, but again I was just using it coil split the whole time. Never really liked the humbuckers, so it was just a coil split guitar. And again, if you're just coil splitting a guitar, are you just trying to make it do a Strat or a Telly thing? For me, that's probably what I was doing, in which case I might as well just play a Strat or a Telly. So that one went. And then I've got a Fender American Vintage reissue Telecaster, which I had, which I really, really liked. The pickups were great, and neck shape was brilliant. It was like a kind of a deep C, but it had like a sticky neck from the nitro, and because of the value in the guitar, I didn't really feel comfortable standing that back to get it comfortable for me, and that's why that guitar went in the end. I don't know if yeah, that's why that one went anyway. And then I had a Fender Baja Telly, which I wanted to try just to see how they compared. I definitely preferred the Avery to the Baja. And that one went just because it really it wasn't a step up from my Telecaster that I made myself, which I call the Twatcaster. So yeah, I guess it might be worth talking about my most recent purchase, which was a K-Line Truxton, which is K-Line's take on the Telecaster. They're the guys that make my favourite Strat, the Springfield, the blue one that you've seen in pretty much all of my videos. I've not really got on that with guitar particularly well, so probably I'm going to move that along. If I didn't have the Sir, then maybe it wouldn't have been as obvious that I preferred the Sir guitar. One unique thing about that Sir Telly, or unique to that particular guitar, is that it's got a Strat pickup in the neck, and I think maybe that's a way forward for me. Maybe it's something about the Strat pickup which I really like. I'm not sure, but I think that might be what I really like about that guitar. Aside from the neck being a nice sort of satin but raw feeling neck, but also smooth with the roasted maple. There's just something right about that Sir for me, which is kind of cool. And so I guess the only other thing to talk about would be things that I'm thinking might be on the chopping block that I don't need to hold on to any longer. So the first one is that K-Line Truxton that I just mentioned. It was featured in my Strymon Volante settings video. You saw me playing it for a bit there, but I've not really played it much aside from that. So that's on the chopping block. I think after playing the Strymon Sunset, the Riverside is on the chopping block for me, just because I play less of the heavy stuff and more of the they're not heavy stuff. So for me, the Sunset, I can get more of what I need out of that than the Riverside, as it turns out, which I didn't know until now, but that's kind of what we find out when we play gear, I guess. I think probably the Thorpe FX Heavy Water, although a great pedal, for me, I've got enough boosts and stuff. For instance, I've got on the Veteran Fuzz, there's a boost on that which I think will do for me. There's also the boost on the Strymon, the JFET. So I've got enough pedals to cover that kind of boosty thing that I'm not sure I need that one. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised that I liked the Boss DS1 as much as I did. So that's kind of one of those ones that I think I'm just going to keep around, because every time I plug it in, I'm kind of surprised by, oh, that sounds actually quite good. So yeah, I think that more or less rounds up where I'm at gear-wise at the moment. Yeah. Let me know in the comments what your pieces of gear were that didn't make it, or if you've got pedals that really didn't work for you. It'd be interesting to hear. Maybe even pedals that were my favourites this year you didn't really get on with, or maybe some of these things that I've just mentioned you really got on with. So yeah, I guess that's all kind of interesting stuff. And I guess it's also worth saying, so this isn't me saying that any of this gear is not worth playing, because I think a lot of it I really liked, some of it I didn't really like, some of it I really didn't like, but all of it I think could sound right for the right kind of gear. Particularly, so even like the Kingtone Dualist I thought was a great sounding pedal, but it didn't justify to me that I needed to keep it versus some other pieces of gear. The Electro-Harmonix Key 9 stands out to me as one that I didn't get on with. The Boss DM2 again it didn't connect with me, but I know for sure that there's people that get on with all those bits of gear, so it's not about saying any of this stuff is rubbish, because it's not. I don't really think there's many companies that do put out rubbish product anymore, which is kind of a cool place to be, because it means you can try this stuff out and either it works for you or it doesn't. But yeah, so yeah, let me know.